Oh, Elden Ring. It happened, ladies and gentlemen, but before we get to that, my overall impressions of Summer Game Fest. I honestly thought we weren't going to get too much out of this event, but we got some cool announcements from it. I think it started off strong, and then the middle was kind of meh, but there was still some cool showcases here and there, and then there's, of course, the big ending with Elden Ring's reveal. And the way the show kicked things off, and I'm going to talk about some of my highlights of the show and some of the moments that surprised me personally. One of the first things that they talked about was this Borderlands spin-off that is based on Tiny Tina, and I thought it was going to be in the Borderlands universe, and to an extent it is because Tiny Tina's in it, but it's its whole separate thing. Given that, I guess it technically takes place in Tiny Tina's, imagination, or it's some kind of story within a story kind of format, but it's basically Borderlands with fantasy elements. You've got guns in there, so I imagine it's still going to be that looter experience, but you've got magic alongside that now, and dragons and spells, and it'll be interesting to see how they mix those elements together and how the gameplay expands as a result from that. It's an interesting concept that I look forward to seeing more of, and no doubt with Gearbox hosting their own event, we're going to see more gameplay of that title. Moving past that, there's the Metal Slug Tactics game. Metal Slug is a very old school game, and people who grew up gaming will surely know about Metal Slug, and to see a tactics version of it with that same visual style, I really enjoyed seeing that, and I'm curious to check it out and see if the gameplay holds up. Then, next surprise and next highlight for me was Kojima coming on the show, which I didn't expect. I think there might have been hints that he was coming on, but, I didn't know about it. So he came on and talked about how he is rethinking the way he wants to make games moving forward and rethink his creative process, because Death Stranding and the way it predicted future events had happened too soon or something. And, to Kojima's credit, God, he knows how to predict the future. MGS2 was a big one. Death Stranding kind of the clarity of that game became much greater once, obviously, the pandemic hit. But yeah, he's talking about how he wants to rethink the creative process, and he's working on this new project that he couldn't talk more about. But alongside that, we did get a Death Stranding director's cut announcement, which seems to add new content. This is the trailer right here, and there's basically stealth segments. A lot of Death Stranding takes place outdoors, and same with MGS5, that took place mostly outdoors. This is indoor stealth, which, older Metal Gear games especially focused on, and Kojima certainly seems to be drawing from that experience for this, I guess, new content that's going to be released with the director's cut. And part of me has to wonder if there's some kind of tease here, if heavy reference to Metal Gear with a cardboard box, is it just a goof as a wink and nudge to the Metal Gear fans, or is it teasing that maybe Kojima's involved in something Metal Gear related, with all the rumors floating around about how Konami is planning to license out the Metal Gear IP? Some rumors are saying that Blue Point is working on a remake for Metal Gear Solid, and there are other types of rumors out there, and I'm wondering if this is a reinforcement of that, or if this is just a goof. With Kojima, you never know. Sometimes he's just screwing with us, other times he's hinting at what's to come. Hard to say for sure, but as someone who really enjoyed Death Stranding, I'm looking forward to any additional content, and I'm looking forward to seeing what enhancements the PS5 will bring to this game. But, new content is always good. I just hope that there is some kind of upgrade program for those who already bought the game, and I hope the business model of selling this director's cut isn't, I hope they don't sell this as if it were an entirely new separate product, full price, and you have to repurchase the game if you want to gain access to the new content. I hope there is some kind of upgrade path, unless they add a substantial amount of new content. I don't get the sense that's going to be the case, though. Kojima did say in a few weeks, or I think it was Jeff Keighley who said, in a few weeks we'll see more about the director's cut, so we'll see how they handle all of that. But more Death Stranding content, I'm all for. And then beyond that, a few things I want to spotlight, a few things I want to shout out. There's a Jurassic Park game, Evolution 2, though to clarify, this isn't a game where you'll be fighting dinosaurs per se. It's more of a construction simulator where you're building your own Jurassic Park, essentially is what that's all about. So if you're into that type of experience, this could be cool. Then there's Evil Dead and Back 4 Blood. They look like really fun zombie shooters. Evil Dead in particular, I'm impressed by the visuals and the fluidity of the animations, and some of the the finishers look really cool. But Back 4 Blood looks super frenetic. It's that Left 4 Dead style experience, just more modernized, and both look like they could be really fun. So I'm gonna keep my eyes peeled for both, and those are also some highlights. And then there were a lot of indie titles that, visually evoked a really strong identity, but I'd have to get my hands on those before I judge those. With all that out of the way, let's talk about the big reveal, Elden Ring. I mean, we've been waiting for this, 2 years? It was in June of 2019 during E3 when we saw that CGI trailer, and finally we got a gameplay trailer, and there are definitely bits of that leaked trailer that made it in the final trailer. And man, we've been waiting for this for so long, and the trailer I thought looked spectacular. There were a few people who noted that, the game does look last gen, which I do agree with from a purely technical standpoint. This is definitely a game that was developed for last gen consoles, for the PS4 and Xbox era, but for a lot of people, the Souls games have never been about graphics fidelity. The Souls games, when you zoom out and look at the macro detail and look at the art style and the design and just the cool architecture, the way enemies look, and all of these different things, just the aesthetic, that's what they nail. And Elden Ring, I mean, it certainly seems to evoke that, and there's definitely a different vibe from the Souls games or from Bloodborne or from Sekiro even. There's a much more sort of mystical, magical essence to this game, and it looks really good. There's some shots that I thought looked gorgeous, and the ferocity of some of these enemies I'm really looking forward to. The enemy design still looks top-notch. These bosses look like they might be a lot of fun to fight. There's a lot of goodness here, and the reception surrounding this trailer so far, from what I've seen, has been very positive. That's not to say I don't get some people who might be a little disappointed about this game not looking full-on next-gen like how Demon's Souls Remake looked. And I do think that Elden Ring is the last game that can utilize that engine in its current state. No doubt they did make some modifications to the engine for Elden Ring because it is a much more open-world experience from what I've read. But at the same time, it definitely looks like it's in the same vein as Sekiro. It looks like an updated version of that engine, and I think this is the last game that they can get away with not updating their engine, and this is them definitely kind of at the tail end of last gen. But for me, these kinds of games, the Soulsborne games, have never been about graphics. It's been about aesthetic. It's been about lore that you discover through the aesthetics, and more importantly, it's about the gameplay. And the gameplay both looks familiar. I mean, it's got that same Soulsborne style of gameplay. You've got, your iframes as you dodge and all of these different things, and the vicious-looking bosses and enemies. But there's definitely some new gameplay elements. The horseback gameplay looks interesting, and the world is so big that you actually do have to essentially use a horse to get around. And there are definitely some cool new looking, magic elements and some new types of weapons and, some familiar animations and some familiar elements as well. But there's enough new here that I'm intrigued at how this game will separate itself from Souls and from Bloodborne. And obviously the final judgment for this game will come when the game actually launches and when I get my hands on it. But I'm optimistic because From Software has been so on point ever since they established themselves as the Soulsborne genre developers, with the Souls games, with Bloodborne, with Sekiro. Every one of those have been fantastic games for different reasons. I'm curious to see the kind of lore that's been established through this collaboration between Miyazaki and George R.R. Martin. And the game comes out in January of 2022, which is basically 7 months away. If it gets delayed, I wouldn't be surprised, but hopefully it won't get delayed. If it does get delayed, though, I'm all for it. We've seen enough of those broken game releases, and we definitely don't want that to happen to a From Software game who have been on a roll, and hopefully that roll will continue with Elden Ring. Hopefully it'll not just be visually compelling, but also have that gameplay meat and substance, and it's hard to think that Elden Ring won't. But they're also pursuing new things by expanding the world, and there's like a day and night cycle, and there's all these different information that's making their rounds now. Now, as far as visuals go, there are some screenshots up showing the game, direct feed screenshots, and you can see it still looks very, very pretty. Aside from the aesthetics, you know, it's still no slouch from a technical standpoint. Definitely a little dated, but I mean, it still looks aesthetically astounding to me. There are just some visuals here that really do look striking, and it still looks pretty damn good. So even if it doesn't strictly look like it was built for next gen, I mean, look at a scenery like this. I mean, this is incredible stuff, I think. And this is what Souls games and Soulsborne games have always been good at, is establishing that atmosphere and creating a mood that befits the kind of brutal games that these tend to be. And I mean, yeah, look at this architecture. With artistic imagination like this, you know, visual fidelity isn't the foremost priority. It still looks freaking good. Now, of course, there's a swamp area. I mean, every Soulsborne games, it's almost tradition at this point. Now, this right here looks like it could potentially be like the intro to the game. Maybe this is the character that you make, and you can make your own character in this game. That's been confirmed. And maybe this is the, basically the naked class of this game, the stripped class. What is it called? Right, deprived. That's what it's called in Souls, at least. But yeah, you get the idea. Overall, it's just great to actually see Elden Ring in action. Hopefully, we'll see a gameplay demonstration in the not-so-distant future to really spotlight some of the new stuff that they've added to this game, and how this game, despite being a Soulsborne, still, you know, manages to separate itself and be distinct from those other entries. But yeah, for me, I thought it was a cool reveal, and ending it off on that note really, I think, made Summer Game Fest worthwhile and overall an enjoyable show. Elden Ring is real, folks, and fingers crossed that it lives up to the anticipation and the kind of excitement that these kinds of games tend to generate coming from software. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is everything that I want to talk about in regards to Summer Game Fest. These are the things that stood out to me, and these are my opinions on the games that I saw and the trailers that were shown surrounding these games. Let me know in the comments below what you think about some of these games, what you thought overall about Summer Game Fest, what you thought about trailers like Wonderlands and the Death Stranding stuff, and of course Elden Ring. What were your thoughts on that? Are you excited to get it? Are you still in wait-and-see mode? Drop a comment below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.